3 years in, Elena noticed something unsettling. Her private journal entries started echoing her partner's exact words. That's when she began documenting the gaps between what felt like love and what looked like manipulation.
My name is Elena.
At least, that's who I was before I became his Elena, the version he carefully sculpted over time, like a potter shaping wet clay until it bore no resemblance to its original form.
Back then, I didn't even realize I'd been remade. To everyone else, we were the golden couple.
Friends called us relationship goals.
My mother said, finally, someone who sees your worth. And for a while, I believed it too. We met in Portland, spring of 2019.
He was Daniel, charming, articulate, always dressed just right for the occasion.
We bonded over poetry at a tiny bookstore cafe near Powell's. He remembered my favorite line from Mary Oliver, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?"
It felt profound.
Like fate. Within 6 months, he'd moved into my apartment on Northeast Alberta Street. Not because I asked, but because, as he put it, why waste rent when we're practically living together already? I didn't argue. It felt efficient. Logical. Loving.
The first shift was subtle. He started managing our shared expenses even though I'd always handled my own finances.
"It's easier if I take care of bills," he'd say.
"You're so creative, you shouldn't be bogged down by numbers."
So I handed over access to my checking account.
Then my credit card. Then, after I got a promotion at the architecture firm, he suggested I let him optimize my bonus.
"Invest it wisely," he said.
"For our future."
I didn't see the red flag. I saw devotion.
Then came the friends. Not all at once, just gentle nudges.
"Sarah's always so negative," he'd mention after I'd vented about work. "Does she really support your dreams?"
Or, "Mark flirts with you every time he's around."
Is that appropriate for a married man? Slowly, my circle shrank. Texts went unanswered. Plans got cancelled.
Eventually, I stopped reaching out altogether. "You don't need them," Daniel would say, stroking my hair.
"I'm all you need." And in that moment, wrapped in his arms, it almost felt true. But loneliness has a way of whispering even in silence. The real turning point wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors. No shouting match. Just a quiet Tuesday in October 2022.
I was rereading old journal entries, something I did when I felt lost.
And there it was. On page 47, dated March 14th, "Maybe I'm not cut out for leadership. Maybe I should stick to drafting, not directing." I froze.
Because those weren't my words, not originally. Daniel had said that exact phrase 2 days earlier, after I'd expressed excitement about leading a new project.
"You're brilliant with details," he'd told me gently, "but big picture decisions? That's not really your strength." And somehow, I'd written it down as if it were my own insight. That night, I bought a new notebook. Plain black cover. No frills. I titled it, "What's Real?" And I started tracking everything.
Day 1, he corrected how I loaded the dishwasher. Said my method wasted water and energy.
I apologized. Day 3, I mentioned wanting to visit my sister in Seattle. He sighed and said, "Again? You just saw her last year."
But it had been 18 months.
Day 7, I wore a dress he didn't like.
He didn't say anything outright but spent the evening complimenting women on TV who dressed more modestly. By bedtime, I changed into sweatpants. I began comparing my memories to his versions. When I recalled an argument, he'd reframe it as a misunderstanding you blew out of proportion. When I expressed joy, he'd temper it, "Don't get too excited, it might not last." Over time, my emotions felt unreliable.
Like faulty instruments. And his voice? It became the calibration standard. I even stopped trusting my hunger. Once, I reached for seconds at dinner. He chuckled softly and said, "Careful, you've been putting on weight since we moved in together." I pushed my plate away. Didn't eat again that night. By early 2023, I was documenting not just events, but my internal shifts. In the margin of one entry, I wrote, "Today I hesitated before texting Mom." Why? Because last time I called her, Daniel said she drains you emotionally. But she's my mom. Another page, he told me my laugh is too loud in public. Now I catch myself holding it in. Is this me or him? The scariest part? I couldn't tell anymore. I tried testing boundaries. Small ones. One evening, I suggested watching a movie I liked, something indie, not his usual action flicks. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "Babe, you know I hate those artsy films. They give me a headache. How about we compromise?" Then he queued up his pick. There was no negotiation. Only surrender disguised as harmony. Another time, I applied for a job in Denver without telling him first. When he found out, he didn't yell. He just looked disappointed. "After everything I've done for you," he said quietly, "you'd leave me for a job?" I withdrew the application that same night. But the journal kept growing. Page after page of dissonance. And then, proof. One afternoon, while he was at work, I searched our shared cloud drive. Buried in a folder labeled Household Budget was a document titled Elena, Behavioral Notes. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't malicious in tone. That's what made it worse. It read like a therapist's log. March 3rd, expressed desire to reconnect with college friend Rachel. Redirected toward gratitude for current support system, me. April 12th, showed signs of confidence after work presentation. Gently reminded her of past failures to maintain humility. May 18th, wore revealing top. Used social comparison technique, mentioned neighbor's modest style. Response, self-correction observed same evening. He wasn't just controlling me. He was studying me. Refining his methods. I sat there for hours, trembling. Not crying. Just hollow. Because in that moment, I understood, this wasn't love. It was curation. I was his project, a living exhibit of the perfect partner, trained to reflect his ideals back at him. And the worst part? I'd helped build the cage. I didn't confront him that day. Or the next. I knew better. Emotional manipulators don't crumble under accusation, they weaponize guilt. So I planned. Quietly. Methodically. First, I opened a new bank account under my maiden name. Deposited $200 cash every week from my paycheck, money he never saw. Second, I reconnected with Sarah. Not through texts, through a handwritten letter mailed to her P.O. box. I couldn't risk digital trails. Third, I consulted a therapist specializing in coercive control. She confirmed what I suspected, this was textbook psychological entrapment. "You're not crazy," she told me. "You're conditioned." The escape happened on a Thursday. June 8, 2023. He was flying to Chicago for a conference. I packed one suitcase, only essentials. Left the rest. Took a rideshare to Sarah's place across town. Changed my phone number. Blocked him everywhere. When he returned and found me gone, he called my mom first. Then my boss. Then posted a vague Instagram story, "Some people don't appreciate real love." But I was already gone. The aftermath wasn't easy. The first month, I jumped at every notification. Expected him to show up at Sarah's door. But he didn't. Maybe because he knew, without his script, I wouldn't play the role anymore. Rebuilding took time. I had to relearn my own voice. Literally.
I'd catch myself saying things like, I think Daniel would prefer, and stop mid-sentence. Who cares what Daniel prefers? What do I want? I started small. Bought coffee I liked even if it was too sweet. Wore earrings that jingled when I laughed loudly. Reapplied for that Denver job. Got it. Now, a year later, I live in a studio apartment with too many plants and mismatched mugs. My journal still sits on the windowsill, but the entries are mine. Raw. Messy. Mine. I've learned that love shouldn't require editing yourself into someone else's vision. Real care expands you, it doesn't shrink you to fit a frame. Daniel? I heard through mutual friends he's dating someone new. A graphic designer. Quiet. Very easy to manage, apparently. But that's not my story anymore. If you're watching this and recognizing pieces of your own life, know this: doubt is often the first sign of clarity. When your inner voice starts sounding like someone else's, that's not harmony. That's erasure. You don't need permission to reclaim yourself. You just need one honest sentence written in your own hand, in your own truth. So ask yourself, whose words are you living by? And if this story resonated, if you've ever questioned whether love should feel this heavy, I'd be honored if you shared your thoughts below. Not for drama. Not for clicks. But because sometimes, seeing your experience reflected is the first step toward freedom. You're not alone. And you're not broken. You're just remembering who you are.